Hello, good morning. Welcome to the studio. I'm going to take a break here in a minute, and I'm working on this tree, trying to turn it from a summer tree into a fall tree, uh, because I think it might be a little more interesting and a little more colorful as a fall, with fall colors. And I'm inspired, I think, because it's October here in New Mexico and some of the trees are changing, and seeing this color everywhere. And of course, the focal point or the star, I guess, of this painting is this car, and then the clouds. I'm not sure who's the star and who's the supporting actor, but uh, uh, but if this could be a little more interesting, it'll, visually, you come in, you look at the car and you look at the clouds and you look at this, and then there'll be some other stuff. So visually, it might be a little more entertaining if I get a little bit of color in that tree and maybe in some of these, the shrubbery and stuff. Okay, I can take a break now and show you around in this part of the studio. As you can see, looking around, I'm primarily a portrait painter, and I take a kind of a portrait attitude towards everything that I paint. In other words, like this car is a portrait. It belonged to the drummer for the Crickets, Jerry Allison, and him and Buddy Holly used to go double dating around in that car in the 50s. And when Jerry left to go to Nashville, he asked me if I'd like to have that car, and I said sure. So he gave it to me, and I had it for a few years and enjoyed riding around Lubbock, Texas in that car. So I like it because it's blue and white, and it picks up the blue and white in the clouds. And so and then my favorite peak, Fisher's Peak, which is in Trinidad, Colorado, where I grew up. So hopefully, it started out to be a golf painting with a golf green and a flag stick, and I thought, well, that's not real interesting. So I put the car in there, and since it's blue and white, and hopefully it'll work. We'll see. It's a challenge. But I'd like to start out by talking about growing up on a farm in Trinidad, which is in southeastern Colorado, close to the New Mexico border. My parents immigrated from Croatia about 100 years ago, actually, and my dad bought a farm, and he worked as a coal miner and so forth. This is a portrait of my dad before he left Croatia, when he was 20 years old or so. He left to dodge the draft. The Austrian army was going to draft him, and so he decided to go to Canada, where his older brother was. And then he went across to Minnesota and ended up in Trinidad because his brother was there, and his brother was married to my mother's sister. So my dad found out that she was still single in Croatia, and so he sent her some money, and she came, and they got married. And this is their wedding picture in about 1921 in Trinidad. And this is what she looked like. This is what she looked like in 1921 when she immigrated. They got married and raised these kids, eight children. This is me and my brother Vince, Chuck, Matt, Nick, Donna, Lola, and Kate. And we all grew up on the farm. No electricity, no indoor bathroom. This was our kitchen, which I painted. That's my very first oil painting. I did that in 1958, and everything happened in the kitchen because that was the only warm room in the house. We had a coal, wood and coal stove, and 8 kids getting ready for school in the morning, and my mother packing lunches in that kitchen was pretty, had a lot of activity going on. Then my dad would drive us to town, and we'd go to our different schools, and then we'd usually walk home. It was about a mile. Our farm was about a mile from town. This kind of going back a little bit, this is the village in Croatia where my parents grew up. It's called Ledenica, and it's in the northwest part of Croatia, about maybe 20 miles from the Italian border. And my mother was 10 years younger than my dad, so when he left, he was about 20 and she was 10, so they didn't really know each other. But anyway, they got together in Trinidad and got married and raised a family. This is a later portrait of my mother and dad. Here's my dad out on the farm feeding the cows. That's a watercolor. And here's our barn, and we had a haystack there where we grew alfalfa and raised hay, for the cows in the wintertime. This is my sister Lola and her 1938 Dodge. This is from a black and white photograph taken in 1944 when she was she got out of high school and was working and bought that car and drove it out to California and went to work out in California, which most of the kids, after we got out of high school, we all pretty much drifted out to Southern California because we weren't crazy about farming and we wanted to do something else. This is a couple of shots of the farm, the barn, and the road leading into the farm. It was, it was kind of a tough life, you might say, growing up in a kind of a 19th century environment, no electricity and so forth. But it was pretty interesting and pretty colorful. And it, your childhood days make an impression. And so I've drawn on those years for inspiration to do paintings. Even till today, 60-something years. Let's see, from, we didn't have art at Trinidad. We didn't have any art classes like in junior high or high school. But when I got into the junior college there, I thought I wanted to be an architect because I liked Frank Lloyd Wright, and I thought it'd be interesting to be an architect. But I found out that they had art classes at the junior college, and the art classes were taught by a man named Arthur Mitchell, who had been an illustrator in New York, and he came back to Trinidad. He was originally from Trinidad, and he came back and was teaching at the college, and when I took his night class, he started out by talking about, design and composition and so forth. And he brought this painting out to illustrate kind of what he was talking about. And this is a pretty large painting. It was probably 4 feet, at least 3 feet by 4 feet. And it was used as an illustration in a magazine, and I saw that and I thought, that's what that's what I want to do. I don't, I switched from trying to learn to be an architect, and I switched to my interest and emphasis to art because of Mitchell and seeing his paintings. Incidentally, here's one of his paintings of Fisher's Peak, which is a landmark in Trinidad, and I've done a bunch of paintings of Fisher's Peak, and so he has the wagon train down there going by Fisher's Peak because it's on the Santa Fe Trail, on the old Santa Fe Trail, and there were wagon trains going by Trinidad. And later, I studied with Raymond Froman. Here's a portrait that I did of Raymond Froman. He was a wonderful portrait painter. This is one of his portraits, and I learned a lot about portraits, how to paint portraits from him. He was probably one of the 3 or 4 best teachers that I had. The other one is Charles Reed, and here's a picture of me and Charles Reed at one of his workshops. And he was a wonderful teacher, a wonderful painter, and I am really indebted to those 3 guys because I wouldn't be here talking to you today if it wasn't for those guys. And one thing that Mitchell told me was after I'd studied with him for a couple of years, he said, if you get busy and apply yourself and learn the craft of painting and develop your skill, this will open doors that you probably can't imagine right now. And this was in the late 50s. So then I went to art school in California. Here's a shot of, as I was going to art school, I worked at night as a janitor for 5 years, from 10 at night to 6 in the morning. And then I went to art school and slept in the afternoon. But I did this painting of my janitor brooms because I thought it was interesting, the lighting and so forth. It reminded me of an Andrew Wyeth style setup. And so I painted it, it's about this big, and I painted it in the janitor closet there at Long Beach State College early in the morning when I'd get through cleaning my classrooms and stuff. But that was one of my about 20 different jobs that I had as a teenager and young man, and till I finished art school and got a job teaching art in Texas. But going back to Arthur Mitchell and opening the doors, if you develop a marketable skill, it opened doors like I got to do work for Ben Crenshaw, who, I developed an interest in golf because the golf course was next to our farm in Trinidad, and we caddied there, made a few extra bucks, and I got interested in golf, and then I got to do work for Ben Crenshaw. I, did that painting, and then the crickets. This is Jerry Allison, who gave me that Buddy Holly car that they drove around in, and Sonny Curtis, who wrote "I Fought the Law and the Law Won," and Mary Tyler Moore theme and so forth. This is Otis Blackwell, who wrote a lot of Elvis Presley songs, and I did his portrait for the Songwriters Hall of Fame. President Jimmy Carter's mother, Tom T. Hall, songwriter, singer that was real instrumental in my career because he introduced me to the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and then I did about 100 portraits for the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Ben Hogan, one of my heroes growing up, I got to meet him and do some artwork for him. Patty Berg is a legendary lady golfer that in the 40s and 50s. Waylon Jennings, Terry Allen, Joe Ely, good friends, and here's Johnny Cash. I did some work for him. So what Arthur Mitchell told me turned out to be accurate. Here's some more portraits that I did for the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Going, all the way back to Jimmy Rogers, and did Hank Williams, and got to meet some of them. Of course, a lot of these had already passed away when I got the job of doing portraits, so I did them from photographs, and got to do Dolly Parton's portrait, and there's Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings. So, got to meet a lot of interesting, inspiring, creative types. Growing up, I think, and always, my interest, I had probably three main interests. I was always interested in, doodling and drawing cartoons and stuff. My brother Vince and I, when we were kids, we liked drawing cartoons like of people that we caddied for up at the golf course and stuff. And so early on, I was interested in doing portraits. And then because of the golf course being right next to the farm, I became interested in golf and really pursued that for 60-something years. I still play golf and played golf in high school and junior college on golf teams, and then I did quite a few golf-related paintings, and the other interest was music. Listen to the little radio station in Trinidad, and they played Spanish American music, and they had an Italian hour, and because a lot of Italian immigrants in Trinidad, and then they had country music, and so I developed an interest in country music. Here's a example of a golf-related work. This is my golf clubs and a couple of my caps, and again, it's a kind of a portrait approach to the subject. And then above that, the Ryder Cup, I did in 1999 for Ben Crenshaw. That's the poster. And Tiger Woods and Dan and a lot of those golfers autographed that poster for me. And so that was a fun project. Here's some more of the songwriters, Hall of Fame, and then award I got in the '90s in Lubbock is the Buddy Holly Walk of Fame. I got inducted into that, and then behind the door here, this is got the Stephen Foster Award from the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. There's a picture of me when I got the award in the 90s, 80s or 90s, I forget. Anyway, so I'm a lifetime member of the Songwriters Hall of Fame, even though I've never written a song, but I'm in the, because of what Mitchell told me back in the 50s and inspired me to work hard and show up. On the wall back here are some examples of some of the watercolor work that I did in Charles Reed's workshop. And then the one above is the mascot for Texas Tech University, the horse and rider that come running out of the football games. I like doing subjects sometimes on just a plain white background. That's what I like about those drawings. I think they look pretty good from a distance, and then they look pretty good close up too, which I think is interesting. The cowboy and the pickup I did in the 80s for a show that was at the museum, the Texas Tech Museum. It was a friend of mine and his dog and his pickup. Again, I like guitars and interesting subject matter. Up above here is a fire hydrant. Again, it's like a portrait of a fire hydrant. And I like the light effect on it. Then a portrait of my dad there on the farm, and my dad and brother-in-law down in the cellar on the farm. My dad made wine, and they're celebrating putting electricity in the house in the 1960s, finally. So we have electricity out there now, and so they were celebrating. And next to that is a portrait of my wife, Patsy, on sitting at a table on Canyon Road here in Santa Fe. And again, I like the lighting effect that hits her straw hat, and part of the figure, and it's a nice. I like. I like light effects like that, and the same thing in this portrait of my daughter Carla. This pretty strong light coming from the left, and I really enjoy the cool shadows and the warm lights. This back here is kind of nondescript, kind of out of focus. But again, it's influenced by people like Mitchell and Reed and Raymond Froman, and also Cezanne. I love Paul Cezanne, and he liked to do a lot of color changes within areas. I'd like to focus in on this painting that I did of a restaurant, cafe, a truck stop, and it reminds me of one time in the 50s when I was working on the wheat harvest, and we were cutting wheat in Texas and Oklahoma and so forth, and I got real brown, in the sun all day, and we went, the wheat harvest crew and I went in a little cafe in La Mesa, Texas, and sat down to get a hamburger or whatever, and all my pals on the wheat harvest crew, they were all blonde, blue-eyed guys, and the waitress came around, and she, put out the water and silverware and stuff for everybody except me, and she took everybody's order except me, and so I finally finally dawned on me that I wasn't going to get waited on because I was too dark, and so I went outside, and the guys, got me a hamburger and brought it out, and they thought it was hilarious, and they even made jokes about, hey, can you speak English? And but that's the only time in my life that I got discriminated against because of how I looked, and it was kind of an eye-opener. But when I see this cafe painting, it reminds me of that. Let's see, why don't we go in this room? I like this particular watercolor because it's my brother Matt and my dad's Model T that he had restored, and this is our farmhouse, and this is Fisher's Peak. And they're all, all those images have stuck in my mind all these years. And of course, I'm indebted to Charles Reed for how, handling the watercolor and like changing color within an area just for the sake of changing color, instead of making it all gray or whatever. It's visually more interesting if the color changes. And even like in the light blue pants, here's a little green and a little violet, and there's color in the shadows that instead of just being brown or gray or whatever, it makes it more interesting to, and of course, that goes back to Cézanne, at least, and the French Impressionists that like to color changes. I like this painting. Again, the strong light effect, and it creates these interesting shapes, these light shapes and medium shapes and dark shapes. This is our mailbox. Actually, like looking from the studio here out to the street. This is the look in the wintertime. And of course, the same thing with the rocking chair, which is this chair with the light coming in the window. And I love these kind of abstract shapes, light shapes and shadow shapes. That's one thing that Raymond Froman talked about in portrait painting. If you're painting a face and it's made up of light shapes, shadow shapes, dark accents, but and if you paint the right shape, the right color and tone, then it ends up looking like the person. But this, I really like the dramatic lighting on that, and also the dramatic lighting. This is this chair again, rocking chair, and my daughter Tanya. And with the light coming in that window, it created this shape against that wall that I really enjoyed painting. There's all these light shapes, and then shadow, middle tone shapes, and then dark shapes, and then it all ends up creating the illusion of what was happening. These are some Model Ts on our farm that my dad kept to use parts. He overhauled the Model T engine every once in a while, and he would take parts from some of these, and if he needed them. So he had kind of his own salvage yard out there on the farm, and it again made an impression on me So I ended up, I've done quite a few paintings of cars and mechanical stuff, just, from being exposed to it as a kid. Here's a hat that Ben Crenshaw gave me when I did the Ryder Cup job. Here's a couple of trophies that I won out here at Quail Run in the club championship. And speaking of music, there's a portrait of Sisto Rodriguez. There was a movie made about him called Searching for Sugar Man. It was a wonderful movie, great story, and I love the way he looked and the way his story is unbelievable. If you get a chance to see Searching for Sugar Man, it's a great movie. Here's my son Vincent and my daughter Jenna. I've just really enjoyed doing portraits of all my kids and brothers and sisters and so forth. Here's a portrait of Tiger Woods, charcoal, that I did, what does it say here? I did it in 07, 15 years ago or so, and Fisher's Peak at night, a dramatic light effect here. About a block away from the studio here in the wintertime. My friend Stubbs, C.B. Stubblefield, a barbecue cook, that you see his barbecue sauce on the shelves in the grocery stores, Stubbs barbecue sauce. And I just put him in with Fisher's Peak in the background because you can do that. You make stuff up and put things together. I like the moonlight effect, and I didn't have a figure in there, but then I decided to put Stubbs in there, and it's called Blues in the Night, because he liked to play blues all the time. Here's out here at Quail Run in the wintertime, you get some interesting things going on with snow shapes and these patches that create abstract shapes. I like this because your eye kind of moves in a kind of a zigzag pattern. And the same thing here, your eye goes in a zigzag movement. This is in Point Reyes, California. My granddaughter likes to walk up and down there. She lives in San Francisco, and she sent me a photograph, and I thought, wow, that's fantastic. It's kind of a ready-made composition. And I like the little kind of foggy stuff up here that breaks up the horizontal, the horizon there. And this is a nice little accent. The trampoline, I love, and I do it every day, just to get the chi going, and you can do, what are these called? Jumping jacks. And you can also run, you can jog in place. And I do probably 20 minutes every day. And I've got my favorite music going, tequila and different songs that, inspire you to move. And I've gotten some pretty good ideas, actually, as I'm jumping. And it's a nice view, looking out into the garden. Or, excuse me, looking around in the studio. I wanted to mention one thing. What kind of made me what I am today is the fact that I went to school and went to art school and got an art teaching job and so forth, and led to several events that made it possible for me to be here in Santa Fe and in this studio, and at age 86, still painting and playing golf and so forth. So what made it possible was the fact that I went to school, went to college, and met Mitchell, got inspired, to pursue art as a career. But to make a career in art, you don't really need a degree. You're judged by your product and critics or whatever. They don't care whether you have a PhD or what. It so happened in my case, education led me to be where I am today. But I say that because somebody out there might think, well, I got to go to school, or whatever to be an artist. Here is one of my heroes, Andrew Wyeth. Andrew Wyeth never went to school one day in his life. He didn't even go to elementary school. He was lucky that his dad, N.C. Wyeth, was a famous illustrator, and he hired tutors, to teach his kids to read and write and stuff. But Andrew told a story about he was at some luncheon, maybe like getting the presidential award, congressional award or whatever for the arts, and he was sitting at the banquet next to the president of Harvard or one of those colleges, and the president, they were making conversation, and the president said, and Mr. Wyeth, where did you go to school and college? Andrew said, well, as a matter of fact, I never went a day in my life. And he said the president almost fell out of his chair, but the point of the story is that you don't have to have a formal education to be a so-called success in the creative arts, music, film, painting, dance, whatever. You just have to develop your skill and get a few lucky breaks along the way, and you could end up with a pretty satisfying life and career. I like the thing about the little saying that it's nice if, as an adult, you get to realize that the dreams of childhood. I think every child has some dreams and aspirations, and if you're lucky and work at it, you can maybe as an adult realize some of those dreams, and it's pretty satisfying. I'd like to point out a couple of things here in this room. One thing is this ceramic bowl done by my friend Steve Reynolds that I think is wonderful. I love it's real sophisticated, but yet it's kind of earthy sophistication that I like. And this is a magpie by my friend Jim Epler that does wonderful wildlife subjects. Ravens, he's famous for his ravens. And this, if you'll recognize this shape, it's Fisher's Peak, which is in a lot of my paintings, and my brother Vince did this, really nice walnut sculpture, and he put Fisher's Peak at the top, which I thought was a nice touch. Maybe as a kind of a parting shot, maybe I'd like to point this out. This is my friend Lucinda Williams, who's a real good singer-songwriter, and her dad was Miller Williams, who was the poet laureate of the United States for a year or two. And he wrote this poem that's titled Where the Spirit Meets the Bone. It says, have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone. I think that's it's a real good thing to keep in mind, to give people the benefit of the doubt, because you don't know what's going on, down there where the spirit meets the bone. I love that. And maybe a couple other things. One is, this is This is a painting I did of a shoe that I wore when I was a kid. It's a hand-me-down from my older brother or brothers, maybe 2 or 3 of us used, these hand-me-downs. And my dad would get a piece of leather and re-sole the shoes when they wore out. And, he put nails in there. And I actually have the actual shoe. And here it is. It's just completely wore out, which is, I think, is a great way to live your life, is just to wear yourself out, having fun and doing the thing you want to do. But I loved how this looked, and so I did a painting of it. But we just wore these things out. I think we were playing marbles or something, and wore the toes out. But in this painting, which I really like, I think this is what the left. That could be this shoe, or it could be this shoe that my brother Vince is wearing. And my sister Kate was cleaning out the cellar on the farm, and there was old clothes and stuff down there, and she saved the shoe, and I'm happy that she did, because it it tells a story, and I like to keep it around to remind me kind of where my journey started, and hopefully your shoe will take you where you want to go in your life. Well, I hope you enjoyed the visit, and if you want to come and visit me sometime, I'm in Santa Fe and not very hard to find. Adios.